Today is the 29th anniversary of when 39 members of the Heaven's Gate cult were discovered deceased in a mansion in Rancho Santa Fe, California. And as some of you know, I guess anyone that's been following my channel for a little while knows that I've been researching the Heaven's Gate group for a few years. I've spoken to some of the former members of the group who still believe in its teachings. And if you can believe it or not, I have also spoken to a few people who have converted to Heaven's Gate within recent years. Last year around the anniversary, it wasn't right on the anniversary, but right around that time last year, I gave a virtual lecture called Heaven's Gate Past, Present, and Future. It was sort of a way to kind of consolidate a lot of the things I've learned through my research and also start moving in the direction of beginning to talk about what initially attracted my interest to this subject, which is the surprising phenomenon of contemporary Heaven's Gate belief. And incidentally, we actually were treated to an appearance by none other than a Heaven's Gate member himself. In fact, a particularly reclusive Heaven's Gate member who, prior to that appearance in the Q&A section of that lecture I gave last year, had never done anything like that before, a recorded sort of conversation like that. So that was a pretty big deal. It was surprising. The aftermath of that was also surprising and interesting. And I thought this year I would do something a little bit different. I thought I would instead open the floor up to questions from people about Heaven's Gate. And I decided to do that on the subreddit r/cults. So if you want to ask questions about my research methods, about Heaven's Gates, the history, the beliefs, the practices of this group, the current state of the Heaven's Gate movement today, what it's like being an independent researcher, trying to build a network of academic scholars, which is also something that I do and I'm always happy to talk about because I always want to encourage other people who are interested in doing this kind of work. I always, want to encourage people to do that if that's something they're interested in. If this is a topic, studying these kinds of groups is something you're interested in. It's challenging, especially if you're not, working inside of academia. There are pros and cons to that, both pros and cons. And I really try to encourage other people that are doing this kind of work and, in whatever medium they're doing it in, whether podcasts, blogs, videos, whatever the case may be, journalism, academia, whatever. What else? I have very much appreciated the questions and comments that I've received on the new series of videos I've been putting out called Heaven's Gate 101, where I do these short talks where I cover different topics related to Heaven's Gate. I've very much appreciated the feedback I've gotten on those so far. And I'm working on responding to some of the questions that I've gotten on those videos too. But for today, and I guess maybe over the next few days, I suppose, because I've done AMAs on this subreddit before. It's a pretty big community. People might ask questions throughout today. They might come back tomorrow or the next few days and ask questions. I'll try to respond to those as, the day goes on. And if some come later, I'll try and get to those too. But if you want to ask any questions about Heaven's Gate or about the way I conduct this research, or anything else related to that topic, you can head over to the r/cults subreddit. You'll see the AMA on the main page. You might have to filter by new because it just got posted recently, so it's probably not on the top list just yet. You can leave questions in the comments under this video if you want. I'm just a heads up, I will probably be prioritizing questions that are left on the subreddit, at least for today. I guess the last thing would be to say that Heaven's Gate is the deaths of these Heaven's Gate members and the ones that followed in the subsequent years after the main group. It's a tragedy. It's very unfortunate that these individuals not only felt that this final drastic act was a viable option for them spiritually, but also that they felt like Heaven's Gate really was the best that they could find in terms of truth or spirituality or community or whatever the case may be, I think you can do a lot better than Heaven's Gate personally. But I guess what I'm saying is that on this day, maybe we want to reflect on the fact that people don't just join these groups for no reason. They join these groups because something's missing. And we might not always get like a final definite answer for every single person, and everyone's going to vary. But maybe today, as we reflect on the memory of this group, what they tried to achieve, positive and negative, maybe we want to reflect on, where we're at today, kind of as a society. Are we looking out for one another? Are we checking in with one another? And are we being there for one another? Because not having that is something that can sometimes lead a person to look for those needs to get met in a group like Heaven's Gate. And so maybe that's something we want to reflect on today, just as a society. Anyway, that's the end of my TED Talk on that. I want to thank everybody who's supported me and encouraged me in this research over the last few years. That's very important to me and very helpful. And I look forward to hearing any questions that people have. So stop by the r/cult subreddit and check out the discussion, or leave a question if you have one. And I'll talk to you soon. Thanks.